Question number 1, Paul Martin.
To ask the Scottish Executive how many of the 33 recommendations in the Justice 2 Subcommittee 2006 report on managing child sex offenders have been delivered since the 10th of May 2007 and on what date these were or expected to be implemented.
Kenny McCaskill.
31 of the 33 recommendations have been implemented. Of these, 9 were implemented prior to 10th May 2007 and 22 have been delivered since then. We are unable to implement recommendation 20 requiring housing applicants to declare they are registered sex offenders, as it would not be compatible with the Scottish Parliament's duty to ensure that all legislation it passes is compliant with the European Convention on Human Rights, and we expect recommendation 12 to be delivered in 2011.
Mr. Martin.
Presiding Officer, I am clear that 6 years after the tragic murder of Mark Cummings by a convicted sex offender, Stuart Leggett, that we have indeed moved on, and I welcome the cross-party consensus on that issue. Although I am not convinced that there is an argument against registered sex offenders not providing that information when they make a housing application. And whilst I do recognise some of the challenges that we face in terms of ECHR compliance, would the Minister agree with me that it is unacceptable that a registered sex offender, particularly considering the history of this particular issue, should not have to provide that information to a housing organisation when they make an application for rehousing? In the instance of Mark Cummings, it was very clear that Stuart Leggett did not provide that information, and it should have been crucial information that should have been provided to the housing provider to ensure that we could monitor Stuart Leggett.
Minister.
Well, I think a variety of matters are raised there by Mr Martin, and I pay tribute to the manner in which he has supported Margaret Ann Cummings and indeed the progress that has been made collectively since then. I do think that it is regrettable. We did, as a government, seek to see whether we could avoid the impediment placed upon us, but the legal advice was quite clear that it would not be compliant with ECHR. It is a matter that clearly causes concern, especially to local authorities and indeed to those dealing with housing applications. And indeed, your point regarding the tragic death of the young Mr Cummings is clearly the case. I think what we have to recognise, though, is that there are other ways in which we can now monitor them. That's through SOPOs, through MAPAs. So I think it would have been preferable had we been able to implement matters as first came out in that general review. I think what I can assure both Mr Martin and the Chamber is there are other ways in which we can ensure that our police cooperate with our housing associations, who cooperate with our social work department, because it wasn't simply the address at which Leggett was living at. One of the clear problems that arose was a failure for there to be joined-up communications between organisations, all of whom not just have a statutory but a moral obligation to look after the safety of our youngsters. So progress is being made despite the difficulties that we've faced as a result of the impediment in bringing that particular matter into fruition.